I should have known something was off the moment. Tom leaned back in my patio chair with a beer in hand, glanced around the yard like he was inspecting new property, and said, "Well, it's my house now." He even chuckled, as if he thought it was funny, just a casual joke. I smiled politely, but something twisted in my stomach. He didn't say, "our house." He didn't even say mine and Kayla's, just my house, like I was a guest on property he'd bought himself. Except he hadn't bought anything. I had. A year earlier, my sister Kayla had called me in tears. She and Tom were about to be evicted. He'd lost another job, second one in 2 years. And with 2 kids under 6, she didn't know where to turn. Our parents were long gone, and she knew she couldn't go to Tom's family, not after the blow-up over that Christmas loan they never repaid. I still remember her voice on the phone, thin and shaking. "I know you're saving for a place of your own, but I don't know what else to do. We're desperate." I could have said no, I had every right, but that's never been my instinct when it comes to Kayla. We didn't have much growing up, and I'd always been the one looking out for her. I had a good job in UI design, stable savings, and I'd been planning to buy myself a small coastal home. Nothing extravagant, just something peaceful. But Kayla had 2 kids, she had bigger needs, so I told her I'd help. And I did. I used my savings to buy a modest but lovely 3-bedroom ranch on the edge of town. I made sure to put it in my name, for obvious reasons. Not because I didn't trust Kayla, but because Tom always made me nervous. Something about the way he talked down to her, the way he always had a new business idea that required someone else's money. I furnished the house, paid the first year's property taxes, even filled the fridge. Kayla cried when I gave her the keys. "This is too much," she said. "We'll pay you back." I told her I didn't expect anything in return, just that she'd take care of it and make it a home for her family. At first, things were good. She sent me photos of the kids playing in the backyard, texted me updates about how much better they were sleeping in their own rooms. She seemed happy. I didn't come around too often, I wanted to give them space, but whenever I visited, Tom was always there, loud and performative. He'd gesture at the grill, the new fence he'd put up, talk about my renovation plans as if the house had always been his. It grated on me, but I told myself to ignore it. Kayla looked genuinely happy for the first time in years, and if I had to swallow some misplaced bravado to keep that going, I would. But that Thanksgiving, something shifted. I arrived with dessert in hand and found Tom in my chair, already 3 beers in, boasting to his friend about closing the deal on this house. She didn't want to sell, he said, but I made her see it was a smart move. This neighborhood's gonna double in value in 5 years, easy. I stood there in the doorway, frozen, wondering who he was talking about. Then I realized he meant me. He was telling people he convinced me to sell him the house, as if I'd ever agreed to that. Later that night, when I asked him casually what he meant by closing the deal, he just grinned and said, "Come on, you gave it to us. You're not taking it back, are you?" That was the first time I felt something shift in me. A crack in my patience. I laughed it off, but I didn't forget it. Over the next few months, I noticed more things. Kayla stopped calling as often. When I texted to come by, she'd take hours to respond, or not at all. I brushed it off, thinking she was busy, but then came the day I stopped by unannounced, just to drop off some art supplies for the kids. My key didn't work. The lock had been changed. I knocked. Tom opened the door, shirtless, towel over his shoulder. "Hey," he said, eyes narrowing. "You should have called." I looked at the new lock. "Why'd you change it?" He shrugged. "Safety, kids and all." I asked for a new key. He gave me a smile I can only describe as smug and said, "We'll talk to Kayla about it. Not, I'll get you one, not sure, just, we'll talk." Like I was someone asking for permission. That night, I lay awake in bed, turning it over in my mind. I had paid for that house. My name was on the deed. I had the mortgage papers. And this man, who contributed nothing, was now locking me out and claiming it as his? I didn't want to cause drama. I didn't want to hurt Kayla, but it was becoming clear. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about someone trying to erase me from something I'd built. And if Tom thought I was just going to roll over and disappear, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I didn't act immediately. At first I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Tom had just gotten too comfortable, too cocky, and Kayla, my sweet, sometimes too gentle sister, just didn't want to cause tension by speaking up. Maybe it was all some misunderstanding. That was what I told myself during the following week while I avoided calling, tried to distract myself with work, and kept replaying his smug face saying, "We'll talk to Kayla about it," like I was some nosy neighbor instead of the person who'd bought the roof over his head. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a shift, a claim, an attempt to rewrite the narrative of how they'd ended up in that house. And the worst part? Kayla was letting it happen. The next weekend, I texted Kayla that I'd love to stop by and see the kids, bring them some new books and puzzles. She didn't answer for 2 days. Then I got a reply. "Hey, sorry, we've just been swamped. Maybe next week?" Swamped. That was her word for everything these days. I knew she wasn't working. She'd taken time off to stay with the kids since Tom had been between jobs again. Swamped with what exactly? I didn't push. I just said, "Of course. Let me know when it's good." But inside, my gut twisted. This wasn't just about a lock or a gate or even a title on a piece of paper. Something deeper was happening here. Something I didn't want to believe was possible. I started looking through old texts, screenshots, anything that could help me piece together the timeline. I found the photos from move-in day. Tom grinning with a drill in hand, Kayla holding the kids on the porch, my caption underneath, "So happy to give my sister and her family the stability they deserve." The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations, most of them from mutual friends who probably assumed I'd gifted them the house, no strings attached. I remembered how I'd made a point of keeping the paperwork private. Even Kayla hadn't asked about the deed. I'd just told her it's taken care of, and she never pressed. She didn't care about whose name was on what. She cared about having a roof, safety, a fresh start. But Tom absolutely cared. That same day, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I pulled out the folder with all the house documentation, the mortgage approval, the closing statement, the property title. And there it was, clear as day. My name, and only my name. Legally, it was mine, every inch of it. That realization should have comforted me, but instead, I felt a hollow sort of grief. This was never supposed to be about power or ownership. I never wanted to hold it over them. I gave them that home because I loved them, because I believed they deserved peace. But now I could see that someone, Tom, was twisting that gift into a weapon. A week later, I stopped by unannounced again. I brought groceries, fresh produce, snacks for the kids, things I knew Kayla always appreciated. The door opened slowly. It was Tom again. He didn't smile this time. He looked surprised, almost irritated. "You should have called," he said, stepping out onto the porch and pulling the door nearly shut behind him. I could hear the kids inside, shouting and laughing. "I just wanted to drop these off," I said, holding up the bags, "for the kids, for Kayla." He didn't move to take them. He just stood there, blocking the door. "She's not feeling well. Maybe try next week." That's when I noticed it. Behind him, over his shoulder, the walls had changed color. A deep blue accent wall that definitely hadn't been there before. New light fixtures, a rug in the hallway that looked like it cost more than my laptop. "You've been redecorating," I said before I could stop myself. He smirked. "Just a few upgrades, making the space our own." My own throat tightened. "Did you paint the kitchen too?" He shrugged. "Painted, tiled, new cabinets. Kayla wanted to freshen it up." I nodded slowly. "You know I'm still the owner, right?" He blinked, just for a moment. But that flicker of acknowledgement was all I needed. Then he smiled again, that same patronizing expression I was starting to hate. "Sure, on paper. But come on, let's be real. This is our home. You're not planning on kicking us out, are you?" I stared at him, bags in hand, heart pounding. "No," I said, "but maybe I should be." I turned and walked back to my car without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about the way he said, "our home," how confidently he spoke, how dismissive he was of my role in any of it. I imagined him talking to his friends, his coworkers, if he had any, telling them how he landed this great deal on a house, how his wife's sister just gave it to them, how he'd been smart enough to make it his. I pictured Kayla smiling weakly beside him, nodding, too tired to correct him, too afraid to disrupt the fragile peace they'd found. The next morning, I called a lawyer, just to get advice. I wasn't trying to sue anyone or evict anyone, I just needed to know what my options were. The woman on the phone was direct and efficient. She looked up the address, verified the deed. "You're the sole legal owner," she said. That gives you full control. If they're living there without a lease or any written agreement, you could serve notice. Technically, they're occupants at will. The words felt cold, harsh, but she wasn't wrong. I asked her what happens if they try to sell it or take out a loan against it. There was a pause. Then she said, "They can't legally, but that doesn't mean they won't try." She advised me to monitor any activity on the title through the county registrar. If someone files anything, you'll be notified. I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long time. That week, I got an email from Kayla. Just one sentence. "Can you help with the property tax this month? It's higher than we expected." Higher than they expected. The gall. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her. Ask her when she stopped being my sister and started being this. But I didn't. I wired the money. Then I went online and registered for deed monitoring alerts. 2 days later, I got a notification. A new inquiry had been made on the property, flagged under third-party interest. I clicked through and felt my stomach drop. A real estate agent, one I didn't recognize, had logged a viewing request. The status: private sale inquiry, off-market, seller resented. Seller resented? Who the hell was the seller? It didn't take much digging to find out. I called the agency and posed as a curious neighbor. "I heard the Henderson house might be going on the market. Do you know who's handling it?" The woman on the line was friendly. Too friendly. "Oh, that would be Tom Richardson. Said he's the homeowner. Wants to keep it quiet until the paperwork's ready." I thanked her, hung up, and sat perfectly still for nearly 10 minutes. My ears were ringing, my face burned. He was trying to sell my house without telling me, without my signature, without my sister even having the decency to warn me. He thought I was soft, he thought I was sentimental, he thought I'd roll over and disappear, let him rewrite the story of that house however he wanted. But he was wrong. He was about to learn exactly what kind of woman he'd underestimated. And this time, I wasn't going to knock on the door. I was going to kick it down. The next morning, I printed every document I had: title deed, mortgage statement, the county property search showing me as sole owner, the alert email about the unauthorized listing, everything. I made 2 copies of the full packet, one for me and one for the attorney I'd decided to meet in person. I even printed out a screenshot of the real estate agent's listing page that showed my house marked as "coming soon, private showing available." My heart thudded in my chest the entire time, my hands trembling over the keyboard. It felt like preparing for war, paperwork as ammunition, truth as armor. There was no turning back now. I sat in the attorney's office that afternoon, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what had happened. Her name was Meredith, a sharp, silver-haired woman with a dry tone and piercing eyes that reminded me of a hawk. She barely blinked as I laid out the situation, nodding slowly with a faint air of recognition. "Let me guess," she said after flipping through the documents. "He's the kind of guy who talks over people, likes to make himself look smarter than he is, and thinks women who give are weak." I blinked. "That's shockingly accurate," she smirked. "You'd be amazed how many Toms I've seen." Meredith laid out my options with brutal efficiency. "You can file a cease and desist against both the realtor and Tom. The house is yours. He has no right to represent it, and the agent should have verified ownership before proceeding. At best, he's ignorant. At worst, complicit. You could also file a claim of fraudulent representation, especially if he forged or manipulated any documents to appear as owner. I'll draft everything you need. But I suggest one more thing." I leaned forward, already overwhelmed. "What's that?" She tapped her pen on the table. "Let him walk into his own trap. Give him just enough rope to hang himself. You want this clean, documented, unshakable. Let him try to sell it. Then we hit him with the full force of it." It was vindictive, it was calculated, and it was exactly what he deserved. I took her advice. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed quiet. I didn't reach out to Kayla. I didn't show up at the house. I didn't confront Tom, tempting as it was. Instead, I played the silent observer, collecting evidence like a hunter tracking prey. I signed up for email notifications on the listing site and took screenshots of every change. The property shifted from off-market to private listing to open for limited showings. I noted the name of the agency, the agent's license number, the contact form Tom had allegedly used to initiate the listing. Then came the kicker. I got a call on a Wednesday morning from an unknown number. A woman's voice chirped on the other end, professional and upbeat. Hi, this is Sharon from Waterstone Realty. I just wanted to confirm your availability for Friday afternoon. We have a few buyers interested in the Henderson property, and Tom mentioned you might be around to open the door. I paused. I'm sorry, who? Sharon Kaplan. I'm the listing agent for 317 Henderson. You're not the co-owner? I'm the sole owner, I said coldly. There was a beat of silence on the line. I was told. Yes, I know what you were told, and I suggest you speak to your legal team. You're about to be served a cease and desist for misrepresenting ownership of a property. She stammered a few apologies before I hung up. That same afternoon, I emailed Meredith everything: the phone call, the name of the agent, the agency, the schedule for Friday's viewing. Her reply came swiftly. Perfect. We'll serve them both at the showing. Be there and bring the original deed. So I did. Friday arrived with a deceptive calm. The weather was mild, sunny, like the universe was mocking the storm that was about to unfold. I dressed with intention: sharp blazer, dark jeans, boots that made my steps echo on hardwood floors. I wanted to look like exactly who I was, the rightful owner, the woman they'd underestimated. I parked down the block and waited until I saw the cars arrive. A white Lexus SUV, likely the agent, a navy Ford Explorers, then another sedan with a couple stepping out, holding a folder of what I assumed were mortgage pre-approvals. I walked up the driveway with a folder under my arm and fire in my chest. Tom was already on the porch, shaking hands with the couple and gesturing animatedly at the front lawn like he was proud of the landscaping. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "Oh, hey," he said, eyes flicking to the folder. "Didn't expect you today." I didn't answer. I stepped past him and unlocked the front door with my key. He tensed. "Excuse me?" the agent said, eyes narrowing. "This is a private showing?" "Yes," I replied, turning to her, "and you're trespassing. You're standing on private property for which I have the deed." I pulled the document from my folder and handed it to her. Her eyes widened. "But Tom said he signed." "He signed nothing. He owns nothing, and you've just attempted to sell a home that isn't his. That's fraud." Tom laughed nervously. "Okay, hold on, let's not make this a big scene. We're family." "No, we're not," I snapped. "Family doesn't lie, family doesn't steal, and family sure as hell doesn't try to sell what doesn't belong to them." He stepped toward me, lowering his voice. "We can talk about this, just not in front of them, all right?" "Too late for that," I said. "Way too late." The couple, now visibly uncomfortable, stepped aside as Meredith approached with another woman in a gray suit. Her assistant, I assumed. "Good afternoon," Meredith said calmly. "My client is the sole owner of this home, and we are here to issue formal cease and desist notices to Mr. Tom Richardson and Ms. Sharon Kaplan, as well as a notice of pending legal action should any further attempts be made to market or sell this property under false representation." She handed out papers like a dealer at a poker table. The agent looked ready to cry. Tom's face was a study in disbelief, then fury, then something that resembled fear. "You can't do this," he muttered. "You don't know what this will do to Kayla." "You should have thought of that before," I said coldly. "You brought this on yourselves." The buyers left without another word. The agent stammered a half-hearted apology and hurried after them. Meredith turned to me. "That went well. We'll follow up with the agency. In the meantime, I'd recommend you consider your next step carefully." "Eviction?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "It's your property, your call." Tom stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The porch that once felt warm and familial now felt like a stage, and he had just been caught in the final act of a play he wrote for himself. "You always thought I was soft," I told him. "You thought I'd be too embarrassed to fight. You thought you could talk circles around me and I'd stay quiet. But here's what you forgot. I built this life by myself. I saved every dollar. I made this possible, and I don't need your approval to take it back." He didn't respond, just stood there, jaw tight, hands clenched at his sides. I walked away then, slow and steady, feeling the eyes of every neighbor on the block watching from behind curtains. I didn't care. I had every right to be there. It was my house. It had always been my house. And now everyone knew it. After the cease and desist was delivered, silence followed. For 3 full days, not a word from Kayla, not a call, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive emoji response on social media. The silence from her was more painful than I expected. I thought maybe she would be angry, maybe she'd lash out, or at least try to justify it. I was prepared for confrontation, for begging, for accusations. I wasn't prepared for silence. It was like she'd gone ghost, and it made me question everything. Did she know the whole time? Had she encouraged him? Had she convinced herself that because I gave them the keys, I gave them everything? That kind of betrayal doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, like smoke through cracks, until the whole room stinks of it and you're choking before you even realize something's burning. I tried to tell myself that Kayla was stuck, that she was caught between loyalty to her husband and guilt toward me. But the more I thought about it, the more that excuse crumbled. Kayla had always had a soft spot for letting others speak for her. When we were kids, she'd hide behind me if we got in trouble. As teenagers, she let her boyfriends make decisions about everything, from what classes to take to where they went for dinner, and now as a woman, she was doing it again. Only this time, it was my house on the line, and this time, it wasn't something I could just shield her from. By the fourth day, I had to force myself to stop checking my phone. Instead, I focused on the practical. Meredith had filed a notice of trespass with the county, which, in the absence of a lease agreement, could be escalated to a formal eviction. It wasn't as simple as people thought. You couldn't just snap your fingers and throw someone out. Even if they were squatting in a home they had no legal right to. There were notices, procedures, timelines, and I was prepared to follow every step to the letter. What I wasn't prepared for was what came next. Saturday afternoon, I got a knock at my door. Not a text, not a call, a literal knock like something out of an old movie. I opened it and there stood Kayla, hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes puffy, holding a manila envelope to her chest like it might protect her. For a long moment we just stared at each other. I couldn't read her face. I didn't know what she came for. Anger, forgiveness, negotiation. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I stepped aside. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared coffee after her second baby was born, where she once told me about Tom's first job loss and how scared she was to tell him she was pregnant again. The same table where, just a year ago, I had told her I'd buy the house for them because she deserved peace. Now, the silence between us felt suffocating. She placed the envelope in front of me. "It's everything. The listing documents, the emails, the messages between Tom and the realtor. I printed them all." I looked down, but didn't touch it. "So you knew?" Her jaw tightened. "I didn't. Not at first. He told me it was just exploratory, that we were just seeing what we could get. He said you were thinking of signing it over anyway, that you'd hinted at it." I raised my eyebrows. "And you believed that?" She looked away. "I wanted to." There it was, the truth wrapped in cowardice. She wanted to believe that I'd eventually give them the house outright, that all the paperwork and effort and money I'd poured into that home was just a temporary formality. She wanted to believe her husband's version of things, because it made life easier. It meant she didn't have to question him. It meant she didn't have to look at herself in the mirror and ask how she ended up living in a house she never earned. "I wanted to believe it because you've always been so generous," she said, voice trembling. "You always helped me. You always fix things, and this house, it felt like the biggest fix of all, like you were rewriting our childhood, giving me the life you thought I should have had." I finally picked up the envelope. "It wasn't supposed to be a fix, Kayla. It was a gift. But gifts aren't permission slips. They don't give anyone the right to steal, and they definitely don't give someone like Tom the right to try to erase me from the picture." She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know. I didn't stop him. I should have. But I was scared. I didn't want to go back to living the way we were before. I didn't want to lose the security or the way he looked at me when he thought he had control of something. It's the first time he's felt like a provider in years." That hit me in the gut, not because I sympathized with Tom, he didn't deserve sympathy, but because I understood now. This wasn't just about greed, it was about pride. Tom couldn't handle that the house came from me, that I had the financial power, that I had given what he couldn't, so he twisted the story, turned me into a footnote in his version of events, the generous relative who handed over a house and disappeared, but I didn't disappear. And now he'd been caught in his own lie. Kayla looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "What happens now?" I considered that. "That depends. Are you staying with him?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I love him. But I don't know if I respect him anymore. I nodded. Fair. I'm not asking you to forgive him, she added quickly. I'm not even asking you to let us stay. I just wanted you to know I didn't plan this, and that I'm sorry. I believed her. At least most of her. But belief didn't change facts. I'm still moving forward with the eviction, I said. That house was meant to give you peace, not a platform for him to lie and profit. If you want out, I'll help you, but I'm not going to pause this process for the chance that maybe he might change. So she didn't argue, she didn't beg, she just nodded. Okay. After she left, I opened the envelope and flipped through the papers. Emails where Tom referred to himself as the homeowner. Documents he tried to edit with a fake signature line. Communications with a second agent he'd been shopping around, trying to undercut Sharon's commission. And then, worst of all, a pre-filled quit-claim deed form with a forged version of my signature on it. It wasn't even close to my real one, but he'd sent it to someone. That was all I needed. I sent it to Meredith that night. Her reply came quickly. That's criminal forgery. We're upgrading the complaint. Stay the course. The next day we filed formal charges. Tom would be served within a week. And this time there would be no porch confrontation, no performative backpedaling in front of buyers. It would be legal, binding, and permanent. In the meantime, I posted a simple message on my social media. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet correction. To anyone who's asked, yes, I am the sole owner of the house on Henderson. Any claims otherwise are false and have been legally addressed. I wish things had gone differently. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The neighborhood already knew, and more importantly, so did Kayla. And Tom? Well, Tom was about to find out just how long the road back is when you burn every bridge behind you. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet, but I felt steady, and that was more than I could say for the woman who'd let herself be erased. Until now. A week later, Tom was served. It happened at the worst possible moment for him, and, if I'm being honest, that was intentional. Meredith made sure of it. He was at work, a job he had only recently picked up, finally trying to rebuild the image of the provider he had spent months pretending to be. The documents were handed to him in front of coworkers, the manila envelope heavy with humiliation, stamped with a bold heading, Notice of Pending Civil Litigation, Fraudulent Property Representation and Forgery. According to the process server, Tom turned white and tried to claim it was a mistake, but there were no mistakes, only choices and consequences. I didn't hear from him directly afterward, but I knew it wouldn't take long. The call came that evening, not from Tom but from Kayla. Her voice was tight, like she had been holding back for hours. He came home and lost it, she said, threw the envelope across the room, started yelling that you were trying to ruin him. I could hear the chaos in the background, kids crying, a door slamming, something breaking. He said you set him up, that you wanted to humiliate him. I stayed silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. Then I said, I didn't have to set him up, Kayla. He did it to himself. I just stopped covering for him. She didn't argue. She only asked, what happens now? It was a question I'd been asking myself every day. What happened next was procedural, cold, and very public. Meredith filed a motion to accelerate the court date based on evidence of forgery. The agency that listed the home launched an internal investigation, suspending Sharon, the real estate agent, who quickly folded under pressure and released a written statement acknowledging Tom had misrepresented ownership. She claimed she had been misled and that she had no idea he was not on the title. I didn't care if she knew or not. Her name had been on the paperwork and now it would be on the record. Tom, of course, tried to walk it all back. He sent me a letter, handwritten, full of half apologies and subtle manipulations. I just wanted to help, Kayla. I thought you wouldn't mind. You're so successful and we're struggling. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Then came the press. Local papers picked up the story. A man trying to sell a home he didn't own, forging documents, using his wife's sister's property for personal gain. They didn't name me directly, but the implication was clear. The headline was brutal. Fake homeowner faces fraud charges over legally listed property. Tom's photo, taken outside the courthouse, made him look as defeated as he finally was. He'd wanted power, recognition, to be seen as someone important. Now he was known, all right, but not in the way he imagined. Caleb reached out again, this time quieter, more ashamed. He's saying it was just a misunderstanding, she whispered over the phone. He's blaming it on stress. Said he was trying to refinance for repairs and didn't know how to tell you. I laughed bitterly. He listed it for sale, Kayla. That question stayed with me for days. Of course I did. Of course I had to. But a part of me, some old, wounded part, still wanted to believe in the version of Kayla that existed before Tom. The sister who stayed up with me the night I didn't get into my first choice college. The one who baked me a lopsided birthday cake the year I turned 20 and got dumped on the same day. The one I bought that house for, not the woman who let her husband erase me. So I went to the house. Not to talk, not to argue, just to see it one last time before it all became paperwork and lawyers and court orders. Kayla let me in without a word. The kids were at school. The living room looked different, cleaner, like someone had been scrubbing at the walls, trying to erase the tension soaked into the drywall. She sat on the edge of the couch while I stood. "I packed some of our things," she said, "in case you need to change the locks." I nodded. That would be wise. We didn't speak for a while, then she said, "I'm leaving him." I looked at her. "Is that for real?" She nodded. "The papers are filed. I'm staying at a friend's for now. He doesn't know yet." That admission hit harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Another part just felt sad. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said. "But you know I can't undo anything. The process is in motion." She nodded again. "I know. I don't expect you to. I wanted you to hear it from me." She stood and walked toward the kitchen, returning with a small cardboard box. "This was yours," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a ceramic mug I'd left there months ago. It said, "Home is earned, not given," a gag gift I'd once bought myself as a joke, long before this mess began. I stared at it for a long time. Later that evening, Meredith called with an update. "The agency wants to settle," she said. "They're offering a formal apology and are willing to cover your legal fees if you drop the complaint against Sharon. Tom, however, is not backing down. He's claiming the signature wasn't intended to deceive." I laughed. "That's his defense?" "It won't hold," she assured me. "He's done. But you need to decide what you want out of this. You've already won the moral war. Do you want to push for restitution?" That question gave me pause. I could sue him for damages. I had the right. I could take him to court, bury him in legal fees, chase him down for every dime he'd cost me. But what would that make me? Victorious or just vindictive? In the end, I didn't sue him. I finished the eviction, filed the final notices, had the locks changed once Kayla confirmed she and the kids were out for good. I left a letter for Tom, brief, cold, and final. This was never your home. It was mine, and now it's mine again. I hope one day you understand the difference. I never heard from him again. When it was over, I stood in the middle of the empty living room, the silence thick around me. The house felt different, smaller, quieter. But it was mine again. Not just on paper, but in presence. I walked room by room, checking windows, making a list of repairs. Then I sat at the kitchen table, took out a pen, and wrote a new chapter for myself. Not revenge, not victory, just closure. I didn't want the house anymore, not really. Too many memories, too much damage. But I would decide what came next. I would choose who I helped, where I lived, what I gave, and no one, ever again, would get to tell me it's my house now, because I knew better. I knew what it cost to build something real, and I knew what it took to take it back. I didn't expect the house to feel like a stranger when I finally had it back, but it did. Even with the locks changed, even with the title secured and the legal mess nearly wrapped, I still felt like an intruder in a place that used to represent something warm, something full of hope. The walls still echoed with voices that didn't belong there anymore. Every chipped corner reminded me, not of home, but of compromise. Still, it was mine, fully, irrevocably mine. The satisfaction was quiet but steady, like the low hum of a motor finally running right after months of grinding the wrong way. I spent the next few weeks repairing what Tom had damaged, not just the property, but the narrative. I reached out to the neighbors, most of whom had kept their distance throughout the ordeal. I didn't give them the juicy details, but I let them know there had been confusion, legal issues that were now resolved, and that the house was no longer occupied by my sister or her husband. I could see the relief on some of their faces. I wasn't the only one Tom had managed to alienate. One neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Langston, offered to bring me coffee the next morning. "It's good to see the right person living here," she said. I didn't realize how badly I'd needed that sentence until she said it. But peace didn't come without aftermath. Tom's fraudulent actions had left a ripple effect. Even after the eviction was finalized and the charges formally filed, he refused to go quietly. I started receiving emails from unknown addresses, rants about how I'd ruined his family, how I'd stolen the house from his kids, how I was bitter and jealous and cold. It wasn't hard to guess who was behind them. I forwarded them all to Meredith, who advised documenting everything. Stalkers like him thrive on attention, she said. Starve him of it. Kayla, on the other hand, kept her distance. She sent one final message, a thank you, short and awkward, and then disappeared from my daily life like a shadow fading after sunset. I didn't chase her. I'd spent enough time carrying the weight of our bond. I had offered her my love, my protection, and a home. She chose someone who saw that as leverage instead of a lifeline. I forgave her in private, but some relationships aren't meant to be restored, some are only meant to be remembered clearly. What I hadn't anticipated was how many people began reaching out once word of the story spread. Friends, acquaintances, even distant coworkers. Messages like, my cousin did something similar, or I wish I'd had the guts to do what you did, or how did you stay calm through all of it? I didn't have neat answers. I wasn't calm. I had cried, screamed into pillows, punched the steering wheel of my car while parked in empty lots. But when it came to the outside world, I kept my head down, my tone measured, and my facts airtight. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I knew I couldn't afford to lose control in front of people who expected me to break. When the court date finally came for the fraud charges, I didn't attend in person. Meredith represented me. Tom pled out. No jail time, but a permanent mark on his record and a fine that, ironically, would be paid with help from his parents. People who had once dismissed me as too controlling when I voiced concerns about his behavior early in their marriage. I read the report later. His attorney had argued stress, confusion, miscommunication, no remorse, just excuses. I wasn't surprised. That same week, I made a decision that surprised even me. I listed the house for sale. Not with a private agent, not off market, not with any of the tricks Tom had tried. I went through a reputable firm, one I trusted, and I was fully transparent with the realtor about what had happened. I don't need to make a killing, I told her. I just want a clean end. The listing went live the following Monday. Showings started on Wednesday. By Saturday, I had 3 offers, 2 above asking. The irony was almost laughable. Tom had tried to sell the house without rights, without paperwork, without permission, and failed. I posted a listing, showed up once to hand off keys for a walkthrough, and had buyers lining up. I chose a young couple, first-time home buyers who had spent years living in a cramped apartment while working double shifts. When I met them during the final inspection, I saw the look in their eyes that I remembered seeing in Kayla's once. Relief, gratitude, cautious hope. I didn't tell them the story. They didn't ask. They just walked through the empty house, hand in hand, imagining their new beginning, and that was enough for me. I used part of the proceeds from the sale to pay off the last of my student loans, something I had been chipping away at for over a decade. Another portion went toward a down payment on a new place, smaller, quieter, tucked near the edge of a wooded neighborhood where no one knew my name. I wanted anonymity. I wanted peace. I wanted mornings with silence and coffee that didn't come with resentment, and I got it. On moving day, I packed the last box myself, just one labeled Essentials, with a roll of duct tape, a box cutter, my favorite mug, and a folder of legal documents that reminded me what I had survived. As I stood in the now empty kitchen of the house that had once been a gift and then a battlefield, I felt nothing but clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just ready to close the door, not just on the house, but on the version of me who thought she had to give everything to be valuable. I didn't need to be the fixer anymore. I didn't need to be the one who always gave more than she received. Tom's last email came 2 days later. He found a new address somehow, and the message was short. Hope you're happy now. You destroyed a family over a house. I didn't reply, but I read it twice, not out of doubt, but to let the words fully sink in. And I smiled, not because I was happy about any of it, but because I knew he was wrong. I didn't destroy anything. I just took back what never belonged to him. The house was never the family. The family was supposed to be built inside it with honesty and love and respect. He was the one who hollowed it out, who turned it into something transactional and selfish. I blocked the email and went back to unpacking. My new home was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a modest yard, no flashy upgrades or high-end finishes, but it had good bones. It was quiet, it was mine. And best of all, there was no one there to tell me what belonged to whom. Everything in it had been earned, not stolen, and no one could ever take that from me again. The first morning in my new house, I woke up before sunrise, no alarm, just instinct. The sky outside was a soft slate gray and everything was quiet, so quiet that I could hear the ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, just listening to the silence. There was no tension in the air, no weight pressing behind my eyes, no expectation waiting to be fulfilled. The past months had burned through me like fire, stripping away the version of myself that once thought love had to be proven through sacrifice. Now, all that remained was something solid, something still, something finally mine. I walked barefoot across the hardwood floor, still chilly from the night, and brewed a cup of coffee. The same mug I'd packed in that final box home is earned, not given. Sat under the machine and I watched the dark liquid pour in, steady and unbroken. Outside the window, the woods were waking up. Trees rustled gently in the wind, birds stirred in the branches. There were no voices arguing in the next room, no footsteps thudding above me, no second-guessing whether I was welcome in my own space. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to shrink to make someone else feel bigger. That peace was hard-earned. It wasn't just about Tom, or the house, or even Kayla. It was about the years I spent convincing myself that boundaries were selfish. That being the strong one meant absorbing pain without complaint. That family was owed loyalty, even when they stopped acting like family. I had believed for so long that protecting the people I loved meant giving them every part of me, my time, my money, my silence. But giving is only generous when it's respected. When it becomes expected, demanded, manipulated, it stops being love, it becomes control. Tom never saw me as a person. To him, I was an asset. A tool he could use to build the version of life he wanted people to see. He didn't care about the cost because he never planned to pay it. Kayla, in her own way, did something similar. She let herself be pulled into his story, and she let me be written out of mine. I still don't know if she ever fully understood what she allowed to happen. Maybe she will, someday. Maybe she won't. But I've stopped waiting for people to realize my worth after they've already spent it. I still think about the house sometimes. Not with longing or regret, but with a strange sense of detachment, like remembering an old job or a faded friendship. I wonder if the new couple planted flowers in the front yard or painted over the accent wall Tom was so proud of. I hope they made it a real home, the kind built with mutual respect, not borrowed power. I hope they fill it with laughter, not secrets. And most of all, I hope they never have to learn the lesson I did, that sometimes the most dangerous thieves are the ones you let in with open arms. Life now is quieter, simpler. I work from a home office with big windows and no one hovering behind me questioning my choices. I read books I never had time to finish. I take long walks without checking my phone every few minutes for another crisis. I have dinner on my own terms, with friends I chose, not people I felt obligated to tolerate. The freedom feels almost indulgent, but that's because I used to think freedom was something you had to earn by suffering first. I don't believe that anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, not just the house, but the whole thing, helping Kayla, trusting Tom, giving so much. I always say the same thing, no, because even though it ended in betrayal, it started in love, and love isn't the mistake. Trusting the wrong people with it is. I've learned how to tell the difference now. I've learned how to draw a line and keep it there, no matter how many people try to step over it. And I've learned that taking something back doesn't make you cruel. It makes you whole. One evening, as I sat on my porch, with a blanket wrapped around my legs and the sun setting low through the trees, I thought about Tom's words from all those months ago. It's my house now. At the time, I'd swallowed my anger, let it fester behind clenched teeth and polite smiles. I'd told myself it wasn't worth the fight, that keeping peace was more important than being right. But now, in this place that is mine in every sense of the word, I see it differently. That moment wasn't just the spark of conflict. It was the turning point, the line drawn in the sand, the moment I stopped letting other people decide the shape of my life. So here's what I know. I may have lost a house, a relationship with my sister, and a version of myself that was easy to take advantage of, but I gained something far more valuable: boundaries. strength, peace, and a quiet kind of joy that comes from living without apology. He said it was his house. Now it's no one's but mine.